Welcome one, welcome all to the very first episode of Echo from the Buttes, a brand new podcast covering all things Arizona State athletics, breaking down Sun Devil football and everything that will be starting after that. Soon after, we're getting football coming up this weekend. I am your host, David Howman, joined by three incredible co-hosts here with me, Austin Bundy, Tom Harden, and Andrew Hazlett. We all know each other from covering the Sun Devils through Devils in Detail, part of the Fansided Network. This is, of course, its own separate podcast, but we will, of course, be referencing our own work, talking about our thoughts and our feelings about these teams all through our podcast coming here twice a week. And we're really excited to get this podcast launched up and off the ground. Austin, I'll turn it over to you first. Talk a little bit about yourself, your background, why you chose to root for the best college program in the nation.
Yeah, well, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here. I met you through Arizona State, you and I over in the downtown Phoenix campus. You came on Blaze Radio with me and a couple other friends. That's how we got affiliated. Reunited somewhat after we graduated and started this podcast and the website with the Fansided Network separately around the time, like you said, the BYU game last season for the Sun Devils, that big win. So I was with fansided.com, the main homepage, prior to you pitching the Devils in Detail revival to me. I went to Arizona State from 2015 to 2019, graduate of the Cronkite School and also the Sandra Day O'Connor School of Law. So clearly I was going to jump at the chance to cover my alma mater, of course. And so, especially with the revival the football program has had and how great the hockey team has been in general, jumping into its own conference, and of course all other sports we'd love to cover at Arizona State. And so, I'm a journalist at heart, in trade as well. I live here in the Washington, D.C. area, so I'm a little far from the desert. But I still bleed maroon and gold and will contribute everything I can to this, and glad you included me.
Yeah, happy to have you. And as someone who myself went to Arizona State but doesn't live anywhere near there, I live out in Oklahoma now. I'm actually, ironically, I'm right in the middle of Big 12 country now, which it's worked out great with ASU moving to the Big 12. Had a chance to go to a couple of different away games. Went to ASU's regular season final game of baseball, playing Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Boy, that was an awful one, though. They ended up getting swept in that game, and it was just miserable. But it's so nice to be able to travel, not too far, to be able to see ASU visiting other Big 12 teams. And I'm excited for this football season, especially after the year we had last year. Like you mentioned, Austin, you and I kind of helped revive this program, or this not the program, but the site as the program was being credit. As the program was being revived by Kenny Dillingham. We started the night before the BYU game happened with the double field rush, and it was just a really great time to dive in and get things started. Crazy time, and then it feels like it's just been a whirlwind ever since then. Of course, you mentioned too, ASU, their hockey team. Even though they're in the desert, they have a really great hockey team, and we also have a really great hockey professional, expert in Tom Harden, who, I personally, I know very, very little about hockey, but I know ASU is great at doing the hockey. So Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you love hockey so much for a Sun Devil.
Of course, thank you, David. I'm a longtime Phoenix area resident. I moved here in 1999 from Connecticut. My hockey roots go back to attending Yale University games with my dad before moving out here. He and I would attend at least one hockey game every year. We had a streak from 1995 to 2020, and hockey's really just been my passion all through childhood. Really made me, I got really excited when ASU moved up to Division I in 2015, and I've been a fan of the team even dating back to the club days. I remember going all across the valley up to the Ice Den in Scottsdale, out to Peoria, over to Chandler, and of course at Oceanside, just seeing the team any chance that I could. And last year, with the Coyotes leaving, I saw an opportunity to start writing and covering the team, giving the team some much needed exposure in hockey with the void left by the Coyotes, and that's where David, you and I connected. You had been seeing my work throughout the season and brought me onto the team, and I'm very excited to contribute not only to hockey but across all other sports for the athletic department. Myself, a graduate of ASU as well. I earned my master's in 2018 after going to Northern Arizona for my undergrad, but I'm a Sun Devil through and through.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, and this upcoming weekend, ASU starts their season against Northern Arizona. So, that's not a conflict of interest for you, though?
Nope, not anymore. Where I would represent both equally, I'm full in on the Devils.
Yeah, as it should be. And then Andrew, we've got you on board as well, and you've been really with Devils in Detail. You've been really instrumental with covering the baseball off season. I mentioned before the regular season didn't end too very well, getting swept by Oklahoma State, but then they made it to the tournament somehow, barely one of the last few teams in, and they didn't advance out of their region, but they kind of made it a little bit interesting for a little bit. And then they've had a really busy offseason as well, going through the transfer portal and everything like that. So you've been really great with covering our baseball program, as Willie Bloomquist is trying to turn that program around the same way Kenny Dillingham did last year. And so that's kind of teeing you up a little bit to talk about your background and what brought you to covering Arizona State, again, the greatest college program in the United States.
Yeah, thank you. I've been an Arizona resident, Phoenix area, for my whole life. Funny thing is, I didn't go to a single Arizona State game until I arrived on campus 2 years ago. And the only college event that I went to was I think it was the 2017 or 2016, the bowl downtown. It was then called the Cheez-It Bowl. I don't know what it's called now. It changes every year, it feels like. But that was the game against Cal and TCU where the final score is like 10-7, which is one of the most it was one of the most strangest games in college football history. If you want to look at that, there's articles about it. It's a good read because a lot just happened. But regardless, my first event was the monsoon game against Southern Utah that got postponed. I wound up going back to downtown thinking, oh yeah, they're not going to restart it. This is a storm that's going to blow in for a bit. And it did stay there for a bit, but then they decided to restart it, and I watched that game in my dorm with my friends before heading to bed because I couldn't stay awake at 1 a.m. at that point. So ever since then, I've kind of fell in love with Arizona State sports. As a Cronkite student currently, I know you guys all have ties to Cronkite. I just had the opportunity to cover Arizona State sports, first water polo, then baseball, and then football now. So that's what I've been doing lately. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here, excited to just cover this team pretty much every day or somewhat close to that. Yesterday I was out there in the bubble with a lot of humidity in there. It was like 50-60% humidity. I was not loving it. Like, can we just have some dry heat?
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
That's why
too,
we're here,
Arizona. Right? It's the dry heat. I mentioned already. I live out in Oklahoma. We have real humidity out here. Sounds like 60% humidity. That's like a normal day for us here. And yeah, the thought of that being back in Arizona floors me. I don't miss the dry heat just because it's so much more scorching than the actual. Like, we have humidity here, but it's not like miserable like it can be in the middle of the summer. So I can't imagine mixing that heat with humidity on top of it, being trapped in the dome. But weather aside, it's been great having you out there watching practice for the football team as they're gearing up, ready to start this season, kicking it off against NAU. Not their biggest in-state rivalry. Probably not even. Do we consider it a rivalry with Northern Arizona?
Who else would they
More
play?
of more of a friendly rivalry.
Yeah. But speaking of rivalries, though, if it counts as one or not, I know this has been a debate topic for a lot of ASU fans. I just want to get it out the way early, starting this podcast off on the right foot with controversy. ASU Utah, is that a rivalry? Are the Utes a rival? Austin's shaking his head no.
They wish. They made that one up as soon as they joined the Pac-12.
For me, it's a game that I circle on the calendar, but it's not. It's definitely not to the level of the Territorial Cup.
Well, yeah, it's not. I mean, that's the oldest rivalry in college football, technically.
Yeah.
Hey, Utah, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Interestingly enough, if you look on the great journalistic site that is Wikipedia, it says for Arizona State's rivalries, it says Utah's on there. For what it's worth, that's there. However, I just don't see it. I don't feel like there's a real rivalry between the two schools. I even go as far to say BYU is more of an Arizona State rival at this point than Utah.
That was I'm in agreement with you on that as well.
I would say BYU historically, yeah, because they've had more games between them, and they've been like a little bit more aggressive, I guess would be the polite way of saying it.
Weren't they
I
both in the
remember-
WAC at one point, too?
I think so, yeah. They were
Yep.
both in the WAC way back when. I think recently, though, since Utah did join the Pac-12, I think there's a case to be made that they had a rivalry there. Because they were, especially when there were divisions, it was the Pac-12 South. It was like ASU, during the Todd Graham years, it was ASU and Utah. They were like going back and forth at it. Jim Mora had a little bit of a moment with UCLA, but that didn't last. Like Tom, I would circle that game on my calendar, and I'm like, this is going to be the one that's going to tell us if we can go to the Pac-12 championship game or not. And I don't know. I don't think it's a big issue to call it a rivalry. I guess Wikipedia agrees with me, but I'm outnumbered here.
Well, we know how much weight Wikipedia is going to carry when David's writing his articles from now on.
Yeah, well, I have yet to actually run into a lie from Wikipedia. Have you guys?
I mean, as long as it's got a
I'm-
footnote next to it.
I'm
I
sure-
check the
I'm-
footnotes. That's the thing. You can check their work. It always adds up.
I'm sure you can stumble across something that is questionably true.
Trust but
I-
verify, right?
Exactly. But yeah, so Utah, okay, maybe a rivalry, maybe not a rivalry. NAU definitely not. But they're in the same state, and we're kicking off the season against them. What are you guys like hoping for, looking for out of that game? Do you want just like carnage, just blow them out? Like, what are reasonable expectations?
Typically-
I'm interested in the with NAU being ranked in the FCS poll to start the season. I'd almost like to see it be a competitive first half before we put the pedal down. I want to see NAU push us. I don't want this to be a game where we just roll. I want to see what this team is made of and how we overcome different challenges.
That's not going to
Historically,
scare you.
we
if
all
we
know
struggle?
that ASU's first game is always closer than we would like it to be when they're playing an inferior opponent. So I feel like this is one of those games where I expect demolition at some point, but I feel like we're going to end up with like a 27-24 ASU victory somehow, where the defense is going to both defenses are probably going to have a little bit of a field day for maybe a quarter and a half, and you're not going to see as much scoring as we think.
Did you say 27-24 like that's the final score? Or that's
Yeah.
how much they'll win by?
I would
think
hope
ASU wins by
27 to
3?
24 is going to be the margin of victory, but we all know historically that ASU, no matter how good they are or wherever they're ranked, the first opponent is always tougher than it ends up being. It always ends up being an unnecessary nail biter for some reason. Like even when in 2015, our freshman year, when ASU was ranked going into that year. I mean, they had the Texas A&M game first, but after that, they even struggled against whatever their second opponent was for a while.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that memory of that Texas A&M game too. I vividly remember sitting in the Buffalo Wild Wings that's like there on University watching that game, and I had dragged all my friends with me because I was like, it's going to be a great game. We're gonna blow out Texas A&M. We were wearing those really awesome white uniforms, and we looked like it was like the white Power Ranger like uniform, and Myles Garrett and Christian Kirk just absolutely destroyed us. And I was miserable. All my friends were like, why'd you make us come out and watch this stupid game?
I still
man.
maintain to this day that Myles Garrett was offsides every time he got a sack.
He was. He was offsides every time. He was jumping early.
Offside or not, you still got to stop him.
I guess.
And Austin, you bring your point about starting the season ranked and always being a bit of a wild card. That brings me to my favorite soundbite from last week's practice from Kenny about how we're chasing 50 years of history and really driving home the fact that this is a very player-led team and just really focusing on the challenges that are going to come out of it and how can we rise above? How can we not not fall into the same habits, but create that new tradition of hey, we deserve this ranking. We're out to prove we belong, and not just be a 1 year flash in the pan. Have some real staying power.
Yeah, the history really does not back up ASU in the follow-up year to whatever great thing they had. But I think it's fair to say that like when you look at like 1996 and then even the 2015 year, each of those follow-up years, they didn't have the same quarterback as they did in that fantastic year. And now they actually have Sam Levitt coming back. They actually have a quarterback who led them to that great season the year before come back, and really the only major weapon that they've lost is Cam Skattebo. And I feel like Skattebo was incredible and pivotal and crucial to that offense, but I feel like there are some pundits that are putting a little too much stock in how much he did for the offense and not putting enough respect on Kenny Dillingham's ability to coach players up and go get guys in the transfer portal. I feel like they're not giving Kanye Udo enough credit for what he could be and how much of a running back by committee, a deadly running back by committee ASU could really have in order to replace Skattebo's production.
I want to say, just for transparency's sake, Austin is also a New York Giants fan. So he has a personal stake in Cam Skattebo being just as good in the pros as he was in college. But I still think that point is well said. They got a lot of different running backs that they're going to be able to use in a committee fashion with Udo, with Kyson Brown, with Raleek Brown, with Jason Brown. Is there another player named Brown that I'm forgetting here as running back?
A lot from a Brown, and Brown.
Well, what can Brown do for you?
They need a UPS NIL deal. They really do.
Yeah.
The Giants always hold a sore spot for me as a Patriots fan. A couple of Super Bowls that will forever give me PTSD, but I can root for Cam and Cam only on that team. The rest of the Giants, whatever.
Eli belongs in the Hall of Fame, and that's the last I'm going to say about it.
Austin, that's your last strike before I kick you out of here.
But,
we were talking before about Wikipedia. That is something that you flag on Wikipedia, and you say there's no way that's right.
Yeah, but you trust Wikipedia, so why are you arguing with me?
I could have done with seeing a little bit more of Cam in the preseason finale this week.
Yeah, 3 carries was criminal.
Got to show what he can do.
Yeah, he'll get plenty of carries. Go ahead, Andrew.
Going back to what my expectations are is for me, I want to see Jeff Sims in by the end of the game. Not because of a Levitt injury or him not being bad. I just want to see Arizona State up enough so that we see Jeff Sims. And I think they can do it. I think they don't have to go out win by 30 or 40 or anything like that. I think of being up by 2 scores late enough, we'll be able to get Jeff Sims in there. In terms of running backs, I think we'll see a committee. I think from what I've seen there at practices and the end of fall camp, Kyson Brown has looked the best of the 3 so far. That's what everyone else is just kind of saying, and I've seen that too. He's had a few good breakaway runs where I just haven't seen that from the other 2 guys. So right now, I'm kind of leaning towards what he can do, but I still think we'll see a committee of all 3 backs.
Yeah, I think ASU's been really intentional about how they built that room behind Scadaboo too. Is like, because Udo is like, I mean, first of all, he comes from Army, which they run the triple option. I don't think a whole lot of people outside of people who like show up to practice and like watch film like religiously. Like it's so easy to take for granted how big of a transition that is, going from a triple option offense to like kind of a sort of a spread option offense that ASU's been running, and it's just like the playbook is like a completely different language for him. The way that he runs the ball, the way that he physically lines up in the offense behind the line of scrimmage is going to be different. The way that his offensive line is moving, the way the offensive line is physically built, because those offensive linemen for the military academies, they're not going to be 330 pounds because they have to be in much better shape physically than your traditional offensive linemen. So the blocking schemes are completely different, and so I think that's probably contributed somewhat to why we still hear that Kyson Brown is ahead of Udo. I think it makes sense, but I also think Kyson Brown is just he's that talented too. We saw when he would come in and spell Scadaboo last year. He's got some really good traits. He can be kind of an all-around back. And then you have Raleek Brown, who is just, he's like a spark plug. He's so fast. He's so quick and agile. But he hasn't been able to stay healthy. It's been his issue. But if you can combine those 3, and then you've got, like I said, Jason Brown, who's a young up-and-comer and has some talent. They have Demarius Robinson from Oklahoma, guy coming out of the area who there's a lot of hype around him too, and he's a true freshman. I would imagine they're probably going to try to get those 2 young guys some reps in some of these blowout games too, which, to Andrew's point, yeah, I want to see Jeff Sims too in this game, and probably this game only. I respectfully to Jeff Sims, I don't want to see a whole lot of him once the regular season gets started, but that's just because Sam Levitt, this should be his Heisman season, and I want to see that. I want to see that happen. Does anybody else believe in Sam Levitt being a legitimate Heisman contender going into this year?
100%,
Absolutely.
yes. He showed it last year that if he had had a full season, like he probably would have been up there with Scadaboo at some point. Maybe not finishing anywhere close to where Scadaboo was, which should have been a finalist. But I think Levitt is going to be in that top 5 conversation for a majority of the season if he reaches a minimum of the level he was playing at last year. And I feel like he's got a whole lot more in the tank, and I feel like with ASU and the schedule they've got in front of him, he has a huge opportunity to really let things rip and show the country that Arizona State is a program to be reckoned with, and was not a flash in the pan last year.
It's also, we talk about the running back room and how we are absolutely stacked back there. Let's not forget that we have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver too. We have a dynamic top 3 of Tyson, McLean, and Moss. Jaron Hamilton should develop into a really solid, fourth, 5th wide receiver. Sam's got weapons, and as long as this team stays healthy, as long as there's no injuries, no other distractions going on, he will absolutely feast with this wide receiving room.
Yeah, I think Jalen Moss probably is the most, maybe not the most underrated, but one of the most underrated players on this team right now. I think when he hopped in the transfer portal from Fresno State, I was in my head, I was like, they absolutely have to get this guy. He is a perfect complement for Jordan Tyson. And he also brings value on special teams as well, which Andrew and I wrote a combined piece talking about our special teams, and they got a lot of improvements to make on special teams from last year. Jalen Moss is going to be part of that. He was an all-conference return man for Fresno State last year, but he also brings so much to the offense as a wide receiver. Also at tight end, we've got Shimon Mateer, one of the most fun names to pronounce, by the way. Shimon Mateer is just a fun name. And he's a really good tight end, too, and the connection between him and Levitt really started to click at the end of last year. They brought in Kentucky transfer Kamari Anderson, who's been showing up a little bit in practices as well. They have Cam Harpole, who's back from last year, more of like a traditional inline blocking tight end. But sounds like he's been taking a step forward as well. And then the true freshman AJ Ia, who's coming in. He's made probably the most highlight reel catches of this tight end group, to where it's like, yeah, you'd like to keep his red shirt, but also how can you keep a guy like that off the field? So, yeah, Tom, to your point, there's great receivers, great tight ends. You can also even work in Raleek Brown as, he's an option out of the backfield. Kyson Brown's been an option out of the backfield. They could even work Raleek on like some, jet sweeps and touch passes, things like that. Get some creativity there. So there's a lot more weapons than they had last year, where it was basically like, it was Jordan Tyson. And then when he went down in the Big 12 title game and then against Texas in the Peach Bowl, they had to get really creative, and a lot of that creativity really focused around Scadaboo. And I mean, they literally had him throw a touchdown pass. That's how much they needed him. So I'm
fittingly 42-yard touchdown pass too.
Yeah, and like not like a little dink and dunk kind of thing like the Philly special, which, Austin and I'm a Cowboys fan for those who don't know. Austin and I could go on all about the Eagles for a long time. Philly special has nothing on the Scadaboo special from the Peach Bowl.
I was there for that. I witnessed that in person, and I still, to this day, probably one of the greatest football plays I've ever witnessed in person. And I've been all ASU home games all 4 years when I was there. So that's a pretty special moment. I got a question for Andrew, though. We're talking about the running backs and getting creative. Which of those guys are you seeing at practice that you think is going to be the best coming out of the backfield from a pass-catching perspective? How many of these guys do you think are going to be most effective in the screen game, and how many of them are going to be used as a decoy in order to let some of these other guys get open downfield?
Yeah, I haven't really seen much of that on practices. They haven't done many screens. They haven't done many check downs, it feels like. I've seen a little bit of Kyson Brown, but not much of anyone else. That's not something that they seem to be doing right now. But when game time rolls around and some of these, with fall camp being over now and now installing, just looking at game week, we might see more of that in practice, and then I could get a better answer for you. At this point, I would kind of lean Kyson Brown. Like you said, David, Raleek Brown I can see being used in that way as like a check down guy or a screen guy. That's something I think we can see, but that's not something I've seen much at practice so far.
Yeah, there's definitely versatility to be had. It just needs to be finessed and find the right fit for each guy to be able to maximize the effectiveness while not getting too gimmicky in the plays. And going back to Shimon Mateer, he's a tough guy to defend. He can line up in the slot. He's not your typical blocking tight end who's gonna catch a few passes. Like, he is a great route runner and has really great physicality to him. He reminds me of Rob Gronkowski, just with a few more brain cells. It's okay, as a Patriots fan, I can say that.
Yeah. Well, and of course, Gronk went to the school that need not be named, so we don't need to show him any respect on this program.
Of course.
Did he ever earn a piece of paper out of that school? Do we know?
I don't bother myself with such trivial matters.
I'm sure the bar there is probably low enough that he can get over it.
What was that Family Guy skit where the guy takes his pulse and he goes, "Congratulations, welcome to the University of Arizona."
Yeah. Austin, you mentioned that the Scattaboo touchdown pass in the Peach Bowl. You said that was the greatest moment you've ever been at in an ASU football game. I'm curious what everybody else is. What is your the best thing that you've been physically present for, game moment that you've witnessed in ASU history that sticks out to you as the best one?
For me, it goes back to I believe it was the 2016 season, beating Cal 51-41, and that featured the onside kick six.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I was there for that one too. I remember that.
For me, yeah, there was not.
DJ Calhoun, I think, was the returner for that one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew.
For me, there was not much my freshman year to write home about. Going, what was that? Only 2-3 wins.
Three and nine.
3-9. There wasn't much there, but with last year, I would have to say the double field storming was obviously cool, but I'm gonna go to the first game where Cyrus Biasso, he had, I don't know if it was a pick six or a scoop and score, but that touchdown right away, just with the whole student section rocking, it said to me, this year's going to be different. I don't know how good this team is going to be, but they're different.
I was in a bar in Ann Arbor watching that game after coming out of Michigan Stadium, and of course they had to put both our game and Tucson's game side by side on the TVs. I'm like, really? You're going to force me to watch that one too?
Was that the big man scoop and score at UCF? Was that game? Is that what you're referring to, Andrew?
No, that was the game against Wyoming.
Okay.
Yeah, it was wasn't it like the second play of the game?
Yeah.
It happened early on.
Something like that. First drive, Wyoming was heading north, so that was, they were on the student section side at that point around the 25-yard line, and I think the student section might have messed with them a little bit, got in their heads.
Yeah. No, I mean, when the student section's going crazy in Mountain America Stadium, it's not Sun Devil Stadium anymore.
Forever Sun Devil Stadium.
But they get really rowdy, really loud. My best moment was actually away from home. I was blessed to have been present for the Hail Mary, Jalen Strong coming down against USC with that Hail Mary touchdown, and we were part of a contingent of students that had done a full proper bus tour all the way to LA, and we were talking a lot of smack throughout that game. We were right up against a bunch of USC fans. And we all kind of knew going into that one, Taylor Kelly was out. Mike Bercovici, it was, I think, his second start that season. We're probably going to get blown out. And then we just kept keeping it close, just to the very end. And when that ball came down in Jalen Strong's hands and we won that game, none of us walked out of there being able to speak. Our voices were all completely gone. I remember walking through the tunnel to get back to the outer concourse area. It was just echoing with ASU chants, and USC fans they could not get out of there faster. That was an incredible moment of just feeling like we took over the Coliseum, we owned that place, and then we ended up afterwards. Our bus driver, he got lost in downtown LA. And so it was a night game too, so this was midnight in LA, and we were literally just hanging out outside of the stadium waiting for our bus driver for an hour. And just we walked across the street to a Little Caesars, got some hot and ready pizzas we were eating on the sidewalk outside of the stadium. It was a great time. We saw Mike Bercovici come running out, and he gave his cheerleader girlfriend a big kiss and everything. It felt like something out of Friday Night Lights. Amazing moment. No notes.
I wonder if you and I had the same bus driver, because 2 years after that, I went to the USC game on the road, the one where we actually did get blown out. But our driver ended up oversleeping during the game, and so we were standing outside of the Coliseum in the middle of LA, just waiting for the bus driver to show up. I think we were sitting outside the Coliseum for like 2 hours later than we should have been, waiting for him to show up, and that was a little scary. Everyone kind of huddling around, making sure you don't go to the wrong side of the street or something. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I've yet to expand my my road games for football outside the state of Arizona, but maybe this year will be the year that I get to some late in the season, depending on how far we go.
Yeah, I was sad to have missed the Big 12 title game last year too, because in Oklahoma it's not too far away from Arlington where it was played, but we didn't know that they were going until the week before, and the ticket prices were just outrageous. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, I was like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to see if we can go down there?
Yes.
I didn't pull the trigger. I've had some regrets in my life. Especially, looking back now after knowing how the game went. I also looked at flights to Atlanta for the Peach Bowl. It was the same problem though. Like the moment that game was announced, those ticket prices went way up.
I was a hair's breadth from pulling the trigger on tickets to the Peach Bowl. I just sat on it for so long, and then by the time I was ready to do it, I was like, do I really want to? Can I do this? No, I'm just not going to, and I regret not doing it. I wish I had just pulled the trigger and gone.
Yeah, even though we lost, it was worth it. And I waited a week before I bought anything for that. I waited a week until after the game, and the tickets, granted, I went nosebleed. They weren't terrible. Flight wasn't terrible either, but I was first half I was up in the nosebleeds, and then second half one of my friends from Cronkite was there, but he got lower bowl tickets, and he's like, dude, there's nobody in our row, just come down and take a seat. And that's what I did. So the whole second half and overtime I was down in the lower bowl on the end zone closest to the Texas section. So that was a little bit dangerous, because as soon as we started coming back, my buddy was a little bit belligerent with the Texas fans, and they weren't having it. There was a moment there where I was just like, I feel like I'm gonna have to throw a punch here at some point, because he's gonna do something stupid, and they're gonna get angry. I mean, we had a point where I think we had a few Texas fans do the real Texas thing with the big Texas cowboy hats, kind of stand behind us with their arms crossed, just looking over our shoulder the whole time. And I'm just sitting there like, dude, just shut up and watch the game. Don't get us kicked out of here before this happens.
Yeah, I did almost get in a fight with somebody's grandpa at that USC game after the Hail Mary. Because the grandpa started coming at me as we were walking out of the stadium. And his granddaughter ran up and was like, "Grandpa, get over here!" But he was coming at me. He was swearing at me and everything. Probably not sober. And I was in college, so I wasn't exactly thinking straight either. But I was like, if we got to fight, I'm holding my ground. I know I can win this one.
Yeah, I definitely had some Tucson fans join at me last year during the Territorial Cup game. I will redact my exact number of beverages consumed, but it was a non-zero number, and I wasn't being belligerent as far as I was concerned. My best friend from high school, he's an unfortunate alumni of that school, but he was back in town. We road trip down for it, and he's just sitting there as other Tucson fans are joining me. I'm like, bro, you gonna back me up on this? He's like, nope, you're on your own. But for hockey, I went up to the Denver series last year, the same weekend as the BYU game, and I could tell that the Denver fans sitting around us were none too pleased at our contingent of 12 people just loudly chanting ASU as we won both games. and just seeing the mass exodus with a couple minutes to go in the second game as we had the game in hand gave me absolute life.
Now,
Yeah,
I'll Uno reverse the question here for you. What's all of ours most devastating moment in ASU history that
Ooh.
we've witnessed?
I got it. At the end of let's see, the 2016 season, going down to Tucson, drove down to Tucson, another one of those bus trips, and that was the one where we just got absolutely toasted. Tucson didn't throw a single pass in the fourth quarter. That's how bad it was. And I remember walking out of that game, and because we were waiting on the bus, it wasn't even like we could leave early. It's like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Just wander around campus. And so we sat there, and we had to watch that whole thing. And I thought for sure, I was like, there's no way Todd Graham is coming back next year as the head coach after that. I had never felt more low as a fan than that moment. And seeing all their fans just so happy and so excited, that was the worst. But also helped out because I didn't go to any games during, the end of the Herm Edwards era or Kenny Dillingham's very first year, where it was just awful every single week. So I avoided those ones, but that 2016 season finale was very, very rough.
Yeah, I also went to that game in 2016, and didn't we give up over 500 yards of rushing that game?
Something like that, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure our entire offensive playbook fit on a post-it note. It seemed like it was only read options or swing passes. I don't think we ran anything else, and we still managed to put up 35 points, but it was just a demoralizing game. It was that game where you're being held down and forcibly your teeth are getting kicked in. It was not fun to be at, and even less fun to. I'm glad I had a hotel and stayed overnight, because I was not gonna have a happy drive up the next if I drove back the same day. So I won't take that as my worst point that I've witnessed in person. I will cite the end of Kenny's predecessor, the Eastern Michigan game. That game was just, you could tell there was no heart at all from the guys did not believe in the staff. I will never mention his name again. But they did not believe in him at all. They did not believe in the culture. There was just no sense of identity for that team, and I still ended up going to probably 4 of the home games, and it was just kind of like, why am I putting myself through this? I love this team, but why am I willingly submitting myself to such torture?
Yeah, I remember that game because I didn't watch that game, but next week in my high school, my golf coach and apes teacher's like, Andrew, you see my alma mater, Eastern Michigan, beat you guys. I don't really care about Arizona State sports at that point, but yeah, it's interesting that now Jesus Gomez, who was there, is now here. So, but for my question,
He's our saving grace too.
I'm thinking, and probably it's not that bad, but my worst is probably the Arizona game of my freshman year, where they just dog walked us in Mountain America Stadium. It's not fun. A bunch of the U of A students came into the student section near the end, which me and my friend group stayed till the fourth quarter, just hoping for hope. But yeah, it was not fun. There were maybe a row of students left at that point, so all the U of A, not all of them, but a few U of A fans came down, and they weren't saying anything to us, which was nice, but it was annoying having them there. It's like, why are you here?
Yeah, I stayed for that full game, and it got to a certain point where you're just like, you know what, I've put in all this time. I'm just going to see it through to the end, good, bad, indifferent. And it was a painful loss, but it also set the tone. It gave us something to put on the bulletin board for 2024, and not let that be a repeat.
Yeah, I think I can't remember which year this was, if it was 2015 or 2016, but the double or triple overtime loss to Oregon. I was at that
2015.
game. I was in the end zone. I was in the corner where he stepped out of bounds. The Oregon player stepped out of bounds, and the replay, they showed it on the big screen, and the refs, of course, still did not call him out of bounds. They said he was in, gave him the touchdown, and then that was 2015, wasn't it? Because Berkovici was the quarterback, wasn't he?
Yep,
So,
2015.
yeah, and then he threw the interception very next drive, and that ended the game. I just could not believe how wrong they got that call, and from there the season was just. I feel like it set the tone the rest of the season for just bad luck program. My parents always remind me that they saw me on ESPN as Oregon's leaving the field. You can see me just kind of like sitting sitting up against the concrete on the end zone there, just all despondent over what just happened.
I remember that game very vividly. I was FaceTiming my buddy who was an Oregon alum on and off again, during that game, and that was a Thursday game too, I believe. So we were the only game that night. It's like everybody was watching it, and he and I were FaceTiming like during overtime, and we're both just in misery. We're like, it got to a point where both he and I were just like, I don't care who wins. I just want this to end. This is taking years off my life.
I remember I was at that game too, and I was thinking about that as we were, as everybody else was talking through, because I remembered Austin talking to you after that game, because you had said you were in the end zone where it happened. I was in the opposite end zone, and so when the touchdown first happened, I couldn't really see. It was all the way down there, and they ruled touchdown, and I was like, okay, sure. And then they played it on the replay, and I was like, there's no way. Like, his foot is completely out of bounds. And everyone on the south end zone, we were all just like, oh, yeah, they're overturning it. Like, awesome, this is going our way. Like, we're going to win this game. And then, of course, they were like, play on the field stands. And that was another one where I had lost my voice walking out of the stadium that day, just almost exclusively from screaming after they made that call. Because it was, like, yeah, he was out of bounds. Like, it bothers me still to this day. He was out of bounds. Myles Garrett was offsides. All these different things.
My roommate that year, like, he's not a big he wasn't a big sports fan, but he was watching that game more just to watch my reactions to it, because I was very demonstrative in my watching. Like, I remember just like going up to the TV screen. I'm like, look, he's out of bounds. Like, I was the Charlie Day gif where he's in front of the wall with all the strings. That was me.
Yeah. Well, it's last year we all had a good year though. It was we didn't have any of those heartbreaks, and it felt like every single week I had just this anxiety of, okay, this is going to be the week where we get beat. This is going to be the week where things fall apart. The Texas Tech game to start the conference play, it felt like that was going to be it. We got through non-conference undefeated. Texas Tech beat us, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is where we run into the Big 12 wall.
It was,
and then
it was a closer game than I was certainly expecting. I thought
Oh yeah.
I thought they would have us by a couple touchdowns. It was only an 8-point margin of defeat, and then Cincinnati not having Sam that game, and just historically traveling east and playing, we never play well traveling east, so that was another one where it's just like, what, I can accept this, but yeah, the rest of the season we were very spoiled.
Yeah, it was great. It went very well, and just the same way that the Oregon player was out of bounds, Myles Garrett was offsides, it was also targeting. We all agree, right?
Yeah, the Peach Bowl, yeah, that was,
Yes.
I mean, even what's his name? Gene Steratore even was on our side, and usually he's on the wrong side of calls most of the time in the NFL, and even he got it right for us.
My poor neighbors, I'm sure they were concerned for the well-being of concerned for my well-being, because I was watching on the patio outside, enjoying the nice New Year's Day, and then just yelling at my TV, probably throwing cans.
Yeah, what's kind of funny about that is 2 months later at the season opener for the baseball Ohio State game, I was working that game. The replay broke for the umpires, so they had to go up to the press box about 3 feet in front of where I was sitting, and they reviewed the play. It was wound up being an obvious play. They got the call right to end the game. And then the press conference, Willie Bloomquist says, "Yeah, we were trying to figure out if they were trying to overturn the targeting penalty."
That was the most bizarre ending to a baseball game that I've ever seen. I was in attendance at that game, and I remember seeing the umpires leave the field. I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I had no idea. And that was the first game of the season too, and I was like, was there a new rule that they passed with the replay or something? Like they have to do it in the booth or something? Because they had also added the rule with like the second first base or something, which I still don't completely understand. But I was like, is this a rule change or what happened?
No,
and then suddenly we won, and I was like, all right, screw it.
Well, yeah, because normally they would do it in the home dugout, right?
Right.
I think it's actually in the visiting
or the visiting dugout.
But yeah, no one knew why they had to come up here until after, I think the press conference was, someone said, "Oh yeah, the replay broke down. It's just sitting right there now in the press room." So yeah, that was a strange way to, as a welcome to covering ASU baseball moment.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, that's the way that these things go, though. You never know what you're gonna get, and last year with football, at least we got one heck of a season, and I'm feeling pretty bullish about this upcoming year, and that's one of the reasons that all of us were so excited to start this podcast, to get this thing up and running, because football season starts Saturday. Of course, it started for some teams this past Saturday with the beloved Week 0. Always nice to see some games. 3 different Big 12 teams got to play. 2 of them played each other. Of course, Kansas State is the betting favorite for the Big 12, which is ridiculous because, hello, we're all still here.
We literally exist.
There's no other team in the country that has more starters returning than Arizona State does, including their quarterback. And we won it last year. I'm not saying we're definitely going to win it again this year, but you would think that ASU would be the front runner for it.
Yeah.
You would think, but the changing landscape of these mega conferences now, it creates such a wide open race across the board. You're not going to see a clear-cut favorite start to emerge until week 5, and that's for anyone. Big Ten, SEC, ACC. Everybody's going to be jumbled in. There's going to be the clear have-nots, but you're not really going to have that front-running team until week 5 of the season.
That, and I think they're also trying to take into account, at least Vegas might be, is the fact that the Big 12 has not had a repeat champion since 2019-2020 with Oklahoma. And now they're in the SEC. To Vegas, I feel like it's a little fair to say it's wide open, it's anyone's game, but I feel like when you take into account that ASU has the most returning starters and the fact that they won it all last year, they should probably deserve a little bit more respect than they're getting with those odds. But I can understand where I think there's enough people that are like, oh, maybe that was just from worst to first, that's a great story, but it's probably not going to translate again back-to-back years.
And then Vegas is also, hinging on, last year being the Cam Scottaboo show rather than, focusing on him being the driver of the team, and not saying that they're selling Sam short, but they're not really giving him the full credit that he deserves.
Yeah. Not that they're selling him short, but they are.
But they are.
Yeah, I also think they're not, or they're discounting Kenny Dillingham too. And for me, what surprised me, I wasn't surprised to see Arizona State not first. I was surprised to be Kansas State first because if I go back to my rankings, I believe I'd wound up having them fifth, sixth-ish. I don't see them being the ones to contend with Arizona State at the end of the day. I think they're a tier off of that. That's what I thought going into the season. I think we'll see that to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and Kansas State, 0-1 right now, as we currently sit, last place in the Big 12. With a little bit of an asterisk, but they're last place in the Big 12. They couldn't get it done against Iowa State, who, the last time Iowa State played a real game, not counting the bowl game, they got absolutely crushed by Arizona State. So, again, everybody doubted the Sun Devils all last year, and look what happened. So I'm perfectly fine with people doubting us this year. I'm really excited for Saturday. I know we all are excited. We'll be back Friday morning with our next episode, breaking down that game, more specifically against NAU, getting ready for the start of the season. But it's been a pleasure, guys, getting this thing started. Thank you all for tuning in and listening, and we'll be back later this week with football, one sleep away. We are so excited. We are so ready. Can't wait to see you on the next episode of Echo from the Buttes.